Good morning. Lord be with you. Let's pray. O God of all people, I ask that the words of my mouth, the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you today. Amen. Before I begin, I want to just take a moment of privilege to say this is the first time I've been able to preach at this pulpit. You know, I'm a graduate, an alum from here, and I didn't really come to, I have a confession, and I've already confessed this to Dr. Batten. I didn't come to chapel a lot when I was a student, and I wish more people would come. I'm glad for those of you here today. I didn't do it a lot because it was so different from the church that I grew up in. I went to a Spanish Assembly of God. I was used to a certain type of style of music and praise, and I just couldn't connect. But one day I decided I was going to come. So I got here early, and this place was empty, and I walked in, and I sat right there where Frederick Schiller is, right there. I sat right where Frederick is. Y'all see Frederick? And I sat exactly in that spot. And you know, then this very distinguished Welshman starts to walk up, and he began to walk this way. I was getting pretty excited because I thought, well, Dr. Walters is going to say something to me. So he walks on up to me, and he said in his wonderful accent, he says, "You're sitting in my seat." Well, I won't tell you what happened after that. But I'm going to ask Frederick later on if that seat is what I heard. It was a great seat to hear. So if I see you nod off, I'm going to begin to doubt Dr. Walters. But I believe that is probably the best seat. The rest of you have pretty good seats too. So thank you, and thank you, Sounds of Joy, for bringing. I don't know if that should be a good name for your group for the time of worship. It was so much. It was a refreshing time. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. So today I want to talk a little bit about the four chaplains, but I'll start off with the setting. It's February 3rd, 1943. The morning started off just like any other morning at Pastor Polling's household. The excitement was mounting in his congregation. You see, Grace Baptist Church in Philadelphia was the home church of Russell Conwell. You know that name Conwell, it's related to Gordon-Conwell. And so at Grace Baptist Church, they were planning to create a memorial for Russell Conwell. It was their founding pastor, after all. And, he wrote Acres of Diamonds. He founded Temple University. There were a lot of reasons to honor him. But this morning, there was a phone call that interrupted that plan. A troop ship, the USAT Dorchester, had sunk off the coast of Greenland. And Chaplain Clark V. Poling, the pastor's son, was gone. So the memorial for Conwell didn't happen. In fact, there would be a memorial for Chaplain Poling and his three fellow chaplains, and this is their story. But before we begin, I want to acknowledge all the military members that are here. Is there anybody here that is active duty or recently mustered out of the military? Any active duty? Any military active duty? Any reservists? How about retired military? All right. Let's thank you. Thank you very much. Now, if you are also the spouse or the child or the grand person of the military, is anybody else here like that? You had some military in your family? Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. I grew up in a military family myself. My dad was Air Force, and my wife's dad as well. And so I grew up in San Antonio, and all my classmates in school, all the way up, really up to high school, I had a lot of Air Force people, especially, but Air Force and Army mostly. So I tell you a little bit about this. I want to talk about chaplains today. And you'll see chaplains are really special, and they have a history that really before our country was founded. Even Charles Wesley and John Wesley served as chaplains at Fort Frederica, St. Simon's Island. Did y'all know that? In Georgia. And they didn't have a chapel for their services, so they would go to the guardhouse and have the services there. The Chaplain Corps was established in Continental Congress July 29, 1775, and their motto is pro Deo et patria. Now, translated from Latin, this is for God and country. So let me be clear, this is not about nationalism today or the militarization of the church. This is not what this message is about. It's about serving God by serving the men and women who have committed themselves to service to their country. And that happens in a lot of different countries, so that's not exclusive to the U.S. But for this context, I want to talk about that meaning of God and country. So for today's world, I think military chaplains are all over the world. They come from all backgrounds now. The chaplain must serve people of other faiths and also people of no faiths. They must commit themselves to being present and to offer spiritual support to everyone. And so they still maintain their faith tradition. You're still who you are when you went in, but you're going to be there now to serve others who are different. Chaplains take the same vow to defend the Constitution as any other military person. They adhere to the U.S. military code as any service personnel would, and they're truly military service people with a special role that's recognized by all the branches of the military and all the civilian denominations, save a few that do not put chaplains in. They're part of the fabric of military life, and so some of you have heard of Jonathan Shea. Anybody heard that name? If you're in counseling, you must read some of Jonathan Shea's books. So he's one of the nation's top experts in post-traumatic stress and moral injury. He lives right here in Massachusetts. His books, Achilles in Vietnam and Odysseus in America, use the classics to explain PTSD and moral injury. It gets into the minds of soldiers who experience this. And this has been something that's gone on from the beginning of time. When you go out to war, you come back and you're different. You're changed. He was awarded the MacArthur Genius Prize for his innovative work. And so Dr. Shea has noted that there's a bond that develops between military personnel and each other, and that bond is so strong that it's like a family bond a mother has for a child, that same level of strength. And the chaplain is part of that family structure. It's that type of love, that type of bond that develops with them. So not long ago, I secured an NEA grant that funded a reading program for The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. Anybody read that book? Things They Carried, Tim O'Brien, great book. I partnered with Dr. Rita Nakashima-Brock at Bright Divinity School to execute the grant. And she has a center called the Soul Repair Center, and they train military chaplains in how to deal with the issues of moral injury, how to cure them, how to help them. So our team decided to invite Dr. Shea to come and be our keynote speaker, and we worked through Texas Christian University. So Dr. Shea came and he gave workshops, and he sat around with the seminarians, and he shared a meal with them, and I was able to go and be part of that because I started the grant. And so he also gave a public lecture, and at this particular public lecture, he stood up, he recited Jabberwocky, by the way. I tried to do it this morning, I couldn't do it. But he did that, and then he says, look, let me talk about moral injury. And he began to explain a lot of things that were really fascinating insights to us. But then he said something that really touched me as a Christian. He said something about Jesus sleeping in the boat during the storm. You know that story. And he said this to everybody. He said, who does that? I don't think Jesus was acting rationally. And so I took him aside and I responded to him. I said, it's only rational if he knew that the storm was under his control. He calmed the storm. And Dr. Shea just looked right back at me. He didn't say a word. And I'm sure he was thinking, look who else is not rational. And I should note that Dr. Shea very rationally accepted the $5,000 check that I gave him after the talk. So chaplains are taught to know when it's time to calm the storm. They need to be able to read the waters and see what's happening in the lives of people. And so the chaplains who work where I worked in the Guard, Texas State Guard. And most of them are men and women. They're veterans from every branch. And I worked with every branch except for Space Force. But most cases, the people who joined the Guard still carry with them memories of service, and the memories that they have are very vivid. They remember every moment, and they can recite back to you the most critical moments when their life was in danger. And I heard a lot of those stories, and I just was there to listen. It's sacred ministry. And it's a time to do what Henri Nouwen said. In a world so torn apart by rivalry, anger, hatred, we have the privileged vocation to be living signs of love that can bridge all divisions and heal all wounds. And that's what a chaplain is supposed to do, is to be there, just to be that bridge and to give out the love to people. On one occasion, I was sent downrange. That's another way to say I went on assignment with our troops, and I went with medics, nurses, and 2 physicians. One was a flight surgeon for NASA, and so we sent us down to the border towns of Brownsville and McAllen. And for a week, we were joined by this team of Army reservists from Missouri who brought in special equipment. We took in over 2,000 civilians. No questions asked. We didn't ask for their papers, for their identities. We didn't ask for their citizenship. It didn't matter. We were there to help people. And we brought them in, and one man, I remember, it was in a wheelchair. He's a Vietnam veteran. He came in with some broken glasses in his hand, and he just came in. He didn't look like he was having a very good day. He had to stay in the line very early in the morning and to stay there all day. And so we brought him in. They did the intake with him. They brought him back. They gave him the vision test. By the afternoon, he had a brand new pair of glasses. He was back the next morning, and he complaining about his teeth. And they said, they told me to come back. And I remember seeing him out there. And he went in. He had some emergency dental work done for him. These are things that he was not able to get done. To me, it was miraculous, because I got to see somebody receive their sight, and someone received the ability to talk again, because now he had teeth. It was really a remarkable thing. There was also this family who had brought in a young man who was on the spectrum. He must have been maybe somewhere between 6 and 8 years old, a little guy. He had gone all the way through. He had his medical treatments taken care of, and then he just had a meltdown. It was too much going on for him, and so he sat down in the middle of the hallway. The parents didn't know what to do with him. They were there weeping. They said, can anybody help? Nobody did. And then I thought, well, you know, my job as a chaplain was to go around and to keep everybody moving and to keep them happy and to pray with them and keep them calm. And I saw that little boy, and for some reason I thought, what if I just sat down next to him? Let's see what happens. And I just sat down, and I didn't look at him. I just sat down next to him and looked around. And after a few minutes, I stood up, and then I just stuck my hand out to the side and looked straight ahead. And remarkably, he stood up as well, and I felt his little hand go into my hand. And then I said, now I got him. And so I began to call out the cadence, and we began to march. And so we marched all the way down. And you know that we didn't have to say a word. He was nonverbal. But this was a way to connect with that young man. You see, chaplains have to do all kinds of things. This is one of those that stands out in my memory as a very special moment working with civilians. You see, the Holy Scriptures and my United Methodist endorsement as a chaplain reminded me of the spiritual nature of chaplains and how many people we have to reach. We're here to reach the world. You know, Wesley liked to say that the world was his parish, and it's certainly true with chaplains who see the entire community, not just the military community who they're assigned to, but also those who are around them. And so I got to live that out. There was a physical aspect to this too, and just before I asked Doreen here, I said, well, what do you miss about PTs? And we kind of really think about that, you know, the physical aspect of that you have to qualify. You know, chaplains still have to qualify like everybody else. Thankfully, they do make adjustments for age and weight and height and all that. But you still have to do the push-ups. You got to do runs on time. You got to do sit-ups. That's really hard. And then when you're at boot camp, they wake you up really, really early with the sound of trash cans banging, and you got to get up, and you got 15 minutes or less to shower, shave, and do your business and get all dressed and be out there on the line, ready to go. You got to run obstacle courses. You've got to eat cold packaged meals called MREs. Remember those? Meals ready to eat. They're not ready. They're packaged. They're not, believe me. And so we're there, sometimes sit on the hard pavement because there's no other place to sit. But chaplains sit and eat with the troops. You know, they are part of the experience. They're the most effective with everything. Those physical conditioning is a means to the end. That's so you can spend time with people. If you can't spend time with people, you can't do ministry. And so this is the type of ministry that you do as a chaplain. Now, the 4 chaplains that we're talking about, they understood this. They were sometimes called the immortal chaplains. That's a real high name for them, but it's because of what they did, and I'm going to get into that story. They were from different faith traditions: Reformed, Methodist, Roman Catholic, and Jewish. Stateside, they would never have worshiped together. That was the way it was in the 1940s. You didn't mingle. You just didn't do that. And they probably wouldn't even have shared a meal in the same room. That's how divided the country was back then. But the chaplain corps brought these men together, and they saw that they were being called by God to do something special in a time of crisis. They ministered to soldiers. They walked the talk. They were not there to check on their denominational standing and to see how many times they went to Sunday school or didn't go to Sunday. That was not their thing. They were there to be present and to love them. And by all accounts, men loved them first. Let me introduce you to the 4 chaplains. Lieutenant George L. Fox, he was born a Catholic in Pennsylvania, the oldest of the 4 chaplains, by the way. At age 17, he lied and got into World War I as a medic. And so he was notable that he rushed into the battlefield to save 2 soldiers who were being gassed. He took off his own gas mask and put it on theirs and rushed them back to the ambulance, saved their lives. He was awarded a Silver Star, a Purple Heart, and the Croix de Guerre as part of that valor. But after the war, he attended Moody, Ohio Wesleyan, and Boston University School of Theology just down the road. He became a Methodist minister and served, I think in Vermont was his last appointment. When World War II broke out, he enlisted in the Army Chaplain Corps, and he wanted to help because he had been on the battlefield. He knew what these young people were up against. Lieutenant Alexander B. Good, he was born in Brooklyn. He was raised in D.C. He wanted to be a rabbi. Oh, he really wanted to be a rabbi, just like his dad. So he attended Hebrew Union College, and he became a Reformed rabbi. And while he was studying and serving congregations, he was able to get his PhD from Johns Hopkins. When Pearl Harbor was attacked, he wanted to join the Navy Chaplain Corps, but he was denied. He was told, "You're not needed, you're a rabbi." Later on, he found out that the Germans were persecuting the Jewish people. And he said, "I've got to do something." So he tried again. This time he went to the Army. And the Army Air Force Chaplain Corps, they said, "Yes, we'd love to have you." And so when he deployed, he sent a letter to his wife and he said, "I'll be home before you know it." How true it was. Lieutenant John B. Washington was from New Jersey. Boy, he grew up in the tough gangs of Jersey, there outside of Newark in Elizabeth. And he ended up going to Seton Hall, and he went on to seminary, became a Roman Catholic priest. He loved playing baseball and football, and like Rabbi Good, the attack of Pearl Harbor motivated him to join the Navy Chaplain Corps. But he had had an injury, they say shoot your eye out with a BB gun. He had lost an eye, or the vision of one eye, because of a BB gun. And so he was denied entry into the Navy. But then when he went to the Army, he took the eye test again, but this time he used the same good eye for both times, and the surgeon didn't catch it. And so they let him in, and he thought, God will forgive me for that because I've got to go in. He was so determined to go in. He cheated a little bit. Lieutenant Clark V. Poling was from a family of ministers that spanned 6 generations. He attended Hope College in Holland, Michigan. That's right next door to Western Theological Seminary. He ended up going to Yale Divinity School and became a minister in the Reformed Church of America. His father had been a chaplain in World War I, and he warned him about the high mortality rate of chaplains. But he still wanted to go. He felt called to do this. So World War II is on, and all 4 of these men from different backgrounds were brought together in Boston at Harvard Chaplain School. They bonded very closely together, and they traded stories and their hopes and dreams that they'd go to the front lines. They really wanted to go to the front lines, and they wanted to be there to help the troops in the heat of battle. That was their dream. But instead, they had a very disappointing assignment. They were sent to the southernmost tip of Greenland. There's a little air base there, southernmost tip of Greenland. And so they were put onto a transport ship, the United States Army transport ship, the Dorchester. It was a converted luxury liner, so in its heyday, it go up and down the East Coast, had 302 first-class cabins, 12 steerage passengers. Sounds great, except for the Army wanted to put 900 people on here. So they gutted all the luxury cabins out. They put the bunks in, and here you had all the chaplains there with these very tight quarters trying to keep everybody of good cheer. Now, 902 men on this boat, and they're leaving from Newfoundland on the way to Greenland. The men were afraid. They knew that things were going to be happening, and so they're always told, sleep with your life preservers on. Sleep with your life preservers on. It's a dangerous area. But it was so hot and so uncomfortable and so bulky, many of the men wouldn't do it, so they just left the preservers off. But the men would do all kinds of things. They would go to, they'd have card games, they'd have all kinds of shows. Apparently the wise chaplains, they knew that they had to break the tension because everybody was just really, really tense. And so they said, let's put on a variety show. Who knew chaplains could sing? So turned out they all had really nice voices, and they did some comedy and dance, and they had a good time. They broke up all the tension. Everybody had the opportunity to go to each other's worship services. And so when Rabbi Good was about to have his first worship service, the men were sitting there having a card game. And they didn't want to break it up until Father Washington came in and he said, you've got to break it up, boys. And they had to go and let the rabbi come in and have his services. But it only took one scolding from the good Catholic priest to get them all to line up. And many of them ended up going to the Shabbat services with Rabbi Good. They're on their way. It's a very small group of ships. You had the Dorchester, a couple of commercial ships. You had 3 Coast Guard cutters, and they're going through some very treacherous waters. One of the Coast Guard cutters noticed that they were being followed by some German submarines in what's known as a wolf pack formation. In other words, they were coming in, zeroing in, getting ready to attack. So he circled back and he went looking for them. They disappeared into the deep. And then on February 3rd, 1943, at almost 1 in the morning, it's 12:55, the Dorchester was hit by a torpedo, and this torpedo hit just below the waterline. Over 100 men were killed instantly, just from the blast. And so the chaplains leaped into action. They began to get all the men up to the deck, and they went up to the top deck where the life preservers were being kept, and they began to distribute the life preservers to the men, opening them up and giving them out. Get the men over here, calm them down, put them into the ships, put them into the lifeboats, get them moving. It was, in all the chaos, they remained calm, and they helped calm down people. Once all the life preservers were gone from the storage, 4 scared men stood in front of them. It says, there's no more preservers. All 4 chaplains, without hesitation, took off their preservers and gave them to them. They never asked them, are you a Catholic? Are you a Methodist? Are you Reformed? Are you Jewish? They just gave it to them without hesitation. One man who came by was cursing himself and saying, I forgot my gloves and it's so freezing cold out here. Rabbi Good said, here, take mine. I have another pair. So he took them. He also took his laces from his boot and helped tie on a preserver for another man who was struggling because of his injury. He couldn't get the preserver on. Trying to get them into the boats, that was the main thing. Into the water was not going to work. It was not going to survive, but they gave away all the preservers. Got as many men as they could into the boat. And then, as these men were in that boat, they could see that the ship was listing. It began to sink. It only took 20 minutes for the ship to sink, about as much time as it's taken to deliver this message this morning. And they saw something incredible. These 4 chaplains stood up on the top area, right about there, and they locked arms, and they began to sing and pray in English, in Latin, and Hebrew, and they worshiped God. They looked a little disheveled from the explosion, a little smudge here and there, glasses knocked off of one of the chaplains, but their arms are locked and their faces were serene. And it was the most perfect picture of heaven that you could have imagined. Can you see them through the smoke, standing there as the ship is starting to upend? Still has men with them, still full of men, and it sinks below. One of the prayer requests that Chaplain Pauling had given to his father was, please pray for me, not for my safe return. That wouldn't be fair. Just pray that I shall do my duty, never be a coward, and have the strength, courage, and understanding of men. Just pray that I shall be adequate. He was. Now, when all was said and done, the chaplains did not qualify for the Medal of Honor because they weren't technically in a battle zone, even though they were attacked. And they received the Purple Heart and Distinguished Service Cross, but Congress wanted to do something more. They created a one-time medal, called the Special Medal of Heroism, sometimes called the 4 Chaplains Medal. And it was just given to them the one time. It's never been given again. Congress established February 3rd as 4 Chaplains Day, and Grace Baptist Church did finish their memorial, but they made a memorial chapel to the 4 chaplains. Right now, it's an old Navy Yard in Philadelphia, and you can see it there. We remember the 4 chaplains, not because they were better than anyone else. A lot of people died. There were 668 men who died on that day, military and civilians. But why do we remember them? Because of their amazing example of men of different faith traditions, working together, sacrificing their lives to save the lives of others, to do what Jesus said about this quality of love, that no one has greater love than this, than to lay down one's life for one's friends. The German Lutheran theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer said to have commented, when Christ calls a man, I could say or a woman too, he bids him to come and die. Jesus invites us to discipleship. He calls us to die to ourselves, to live for others. For some, the path of chaplaincy might be where God's calling you. And I hope that'll be the case. I hope there'll be a chaplain somewhere in here today that maybe God's been talking to you already. Think about it. But Jesus is calling us all, saying, come, take up your cross, and die with me. At this point, I'd like to invite retired U.S. Air Force captain, retired U.S. Air Force Captain Doreen Desjardins, to join me on stage. I'm going to call out the names of the 4 chaplains. And as I call them out, she's going to ring the bell. And would you please do us the honor to stand while we call out their names? Lieutenant George Lansing Fox. Lieutenant Alexander David Good. Lieutenant Clark Vandersall Poling. Lieutenant John Patrick Washington. Thank you. You may be seated. Many of you have already sacrificed much to come here, study for ministry. You've left your family, special relationships, friends, homes, cultures, even your countries, and you live daily with the stresses of that. I get that. I do. I can't step into your shoes, but I can see that there's sacrifices. They're real. But let me encourage you. There's no greater love than to give your life for those that are your friends, for Jesus. And you don't have to become a military chaplain to enter into that, but you can stand up for your friends and take advantage. This is a moment to say yes and to live into that special quality of love, that special quality of sacrifice.